Well, good evening. This is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on February the 13th. And welcome to you all. Thank you for joining the conversation. And the topic this evening is George Soros and his plea, his bleat. Europe, please wake up. This is a letter that George Soros penned just recently, and he is imploring the European people, the pro-European people, to stand up, to stand off and fight against the internal enemies of Europe and the external enemies of Europe. Now, here is a man who is desperately scared of his project, or his group's project, falling apart at the seams. And I find it interesting that this letter that he's penned is actually very revealing. First of all, because it's so insightful. He really has hit the nail on the head. And, of course, because it's his dream, he has every right to be afraid, because it is coming undone at the seams. But, he refers to almost as a fearful threat that if Europe doesn't get its act together, it will end up going through the Russian experience of '91, when basically Russia fell apart. But, two things that tells you. Firstly, is that he liked the Russian system. He liked the Balkanization of Russia and the control of all of those satellite states from a central government. But the second thing is that, Russia itself is a cautionary tale about trying to consolidate a country. We have to remember that Russia was formed in 1922 as the USSR, and basically it just invaded every satellite state around it and took it over. And there's been continual troubles from Chechnya, Georgia, Armenia and the Ukraine. They have never wanted to be under Russian rule, and they have resisted at every moment, and there's been border skirmishes in all of those three states for as long as I can remember anyways. And of course in the end it just got so bad that Russia could not afford to sustain the military and the police that it needed to control all of these satellite states. And of course, because the central government was a long way away from each of these states, it never knew what they wanted. It never knew what the people wanted on the street, what the real conditions were, because they never really bothered to look. They got third or fourth hand reports from people who were underpaid and really couldn't care less whether they did a good report or not. And so they never really understood that these states always wanted to break away from Russia. And when that collapse finally came in 1991, that's what happened. These states got their independence back again. And of course, since that big rumble, and that Russia has basically pulled in its horns as far as finances are concerned, Russia has now got itself back on its feet again, and it's looking like a pretty stable country. The other satellite states, well, they're going through their own difficulties, because many of them were. But basically, because this was the Russia problem, the cost of modernizing was just absolutely huge. So a lot of these countries are still in a sort of cruel dictator kind of state. Uzbekistan, for example, Israel Karim, Chechnya, of course, has always been unstable. So there you have your example of what happens when you try to consolidate. And Europe is no different. So I would have thought that a person who is as smart as George Soros would have seen that this template just doesn't work. So when he says EU values, we want the people, pro-European, to support the values that we hold dear and true. Well, I've never actually seen these values written down anywhere or given across in any kind of meaningful form. But what I do know is that you can tell a person, a country, or whatever by observing how they behave. If you have someone that you think is a friend, and you see them abusing somebody, shouting at them or fighting or what have you, eventually they will treat you like that. That's just how it works. Okay, so how does the EU behave? What have we seen? Well, the negotiations with Brexit has been awfully rancorous. There has been fighting backwards and forwards. There has been name calling by the EU. The EU has been basically completely intransigent. They could have handled this negotiation so much better. And what's going to happen is, you're going to leave Britain with a bad taste in its mouth, and maybe negotiations won't go so well next time around, now that we've seen how negotiations are being handled. But, there are other countries in Europe that have been stick-handled. Greece is one. They were forced to take a loan from Germany to bail them out, which they didn't want to do. They tried to stifle or change the results from a legal election taking place in Italy, Portugal and Spain. So this is the kind of people that you are dealing with. And George Soros even says in his letter that if we can't bully you into place, we will regulate you into place. And so this is what Europe is, just full of regulations that no country can possibly live up to. And especially because these regulations come from such a long way away, it really doesn't matter who the people vote in as a form of government. That government is still going to have to take the regulatory rulings that come out of Brussels. So this is a no-win situation for the people, and George Soros talks about the elections and the antiquated election process. And again, this is the will of the people being denied. He wants a bureaucracy. He does not want direct democracy, and that is what the people want. And these elitists are so far away from our reality, they don't understand why we don't want that. They simply cannot get why we would not want to be governed by an authoritarian type of system. I think the elite have basically failed to notice that since the internet age, the populace of the world has matured. Okay, we're no longer children. Okay, we are like entering our teenage years as far as recognizing the world around us and what the potential is for the world. Okay, and teenagers always want their freedom, and we want our freedom, and we want it now. So, what have we got here? What are Europe's values? Well, number one, it is an authoritarian state. 2, it will not hesitate to bully you either physically or through regulation. And 3, when you're invited in, it's all warm handshakes, and when you want to leave, oh my God, all of a sudden the door is swiftly locked behind you, and you have to find an alternate exit, which is a very small window in the bathroom. Okay, so is that the kind of friend that you would like to have? I don't think I'd like to have that kind of a friend. I like open negotiations. I like to have a say in what happens in my life and in my home and in my backyard. I think we all do. And this is why, and George Soros is absolutely correct, this is a revolutionary moment. Okay? Don't make no mistake about that. This is a revolutionary moment, and we need to seize this because the outcome is uncertain yet. These cards can fall anywhere. Okay, so don't give up hope. Do not give up hope. This is a very positive moment, and of course it's up to us. We're the ones who are going to make these changes. It's up to us to decide the way we want to live going forward, and the way I want to live is in a society that recognizes direct democracy. Now, the other thing that I really don't understand why they're not getting this picture, we see all around us all the time. Okay, people want to check their ancestry through their DNA. People want to know where they came from. I've heard that people who are adopted want to find out who their birth parents are and what their heritage is. This stuff is very important to people, and it seems no matter what culture you go to, no matter what part of the world that you go to, it's an important thing in people's lives to know where they came from, to know their background, to know their heritage, to know their history. And it may seem that the EU is going to recognize that into the future, but how can you retain your culture when you are homogenizing all of the rules, all of the regulations, all of the codes, the way you must behave, your money, your financial system? How can you do that? You can't have there's no autonomy in that. There's no franchise in that. Okay, and people want that. This may even go back tens of thousands of years, and it is so ingrained in our psyche that we want to belong. And that's what I want to see going forward, not these huge trade deals between corporations. No, the allowance of mom and pop type businesses, cottage industries, to be able to trade freely around the world without let or hindrance, that we retain our individuality, our uniqueness, our culture, the things that make us us. Anyway, let's go take a look at this letter and I'll come back and do a quick wrap up. Project Syndicate, the world's opinion page. Europe, please wake up. George Soros. The first step to defending Europe from its enemies, both internal and external, is to recognise the magnitude of the threat they present. The second is to awaken the sleeping pro-European majority and mobilise it to defend the values on which the EU was founded. Munich. Europe is sleepwalking into oblivion, and the people of Europe need to wake up before it's too late. If they don't, the European Union will go the way of the Soviet Union in 1991. And there you go. You see, he's saying the USSR was the way to do business. Neither our leaders nor ordinary citizens seem to understand that we are experiencing a revolutionary moment, that the range of possibilities is very broad, and that the eventual outcome is thus highly uncertain. And that is what I'm realizing, and that's what I'm talking about, is we are in this revolutionary moment, and the outcome is uncertain. The outcome is up to us. Most of us assume that the future will more or less resemble the present, but this is not necessarily so. In a long and eventful life, I have witnessed many periods of what I call radical disequilibrium. We are living in such a period today. The next inflection point will be the elections for the European Parliament in May 2019. Unfortunately, anti-European forces will enjoy a competitive advantage in the balloting. There are several reasons for this, including the outdated party system that prevails in most European countries. And what he's referring to there is having a political party that you can vote for, and that party then, okay, maybe they don't always listen to you, but they're supposed to listen to you and you can vote them out again. That's what he's talking about getting rid of, is the voting system, so that you are completely controlled by bureaucrats. And this is how these people very cleverly word things in ways which sound, and we assume way too much. Okay, these words sound like they're the words that we use and that we understand. And because, the anti-European forces will enjoy a competitive advantage in the balloting, he wants to remove the balloting process. There are several reasons for this, including the outdated party system that prevails in most European countries, the practical impossibility of treaty change, and the lack of legal tools for disciplining member states that violate the principles on which the European Union was founded. In other words, if you don't do what we say, we'll beat you up. And if that doesn't work, the EU can impose the acquis communautaire, the body of European Union law, on applicant countries, but lacks sufficient capacity to enforce member states' compliance. The antiquated party system hampers those who want to preserve the values on which the EU is founded, but helps those who want to replace those values with something radically different. This is true in individual countries, and even more so in trans-European alliances. Okay, again, he's saying want to replace those values of bullying and intransigence with something radically different. And you know what that radically different thing is? The voice of the people and direct democracy. People want to have actual input in the way their countries are run, especially now that they see that their countries are being run incredibly badly. This is an interesting part here, but the collusion between Corbyn and May has aroused opposition in both parties, which in the case of Labour is bordering on rebellion. The day after Corbyn and May met, May announced a programme to aid impoverished pro-Brexit Labour constituencies in the north of England. Corbyn is now accused of betraying the pledge he made at Labour's September 2018 party conference to back a second Brexit referendum if holding election is not possible. So here we have the left and the right coming together to push Brexit forward, because they both know there may be some rebellion going on, but there are significant members in each party that want Brexit to go ahead, and each leader is done without that support. The public is also becoming aware of the dire consequences of Brexit. The chances that May's deal will be rejected on February the 14th are growing by the day. That could set in motion a groundswell of support for a referendum, or even better, for revoking Britain's Article 50 notification. You see how scared they are? You see how scared they are? They know that a no-deal Brexit will force England to start trading with other countries, and they're going to be successful at it. And here is the last piece of fear-mongering. The first step to defending Europe from its enemies, both internal and external, is to recognise the magnitude of the threat they present. The second is to awaken the sleeping pro-European majority and mobilise it to defend the values on which the EU is founded. Otherwise, the dream of a united Europe could become the nightmare of the 21st century. No, sorry, George, it will become a nightmare for you and your elitist friends. It will be a freeing of the people from the yoke that they've had to carry for so many years. Now, I'm not sure whether Britain can entirely walk away, because it still does an awful lot of trade with France and Germany, but it still doesn't leave a very good taste in your mouth, and it's a pretty good indication of how all negotiations are going to go. So one of these things that I did notice with the EU, and it's just a little thing, but it really is very revealing. And this is before there was some food issues in the EU, but around about 5 years ago, basically they had measurements for all kinds of vegetables. Okay, lengths for carrots, a specific curvature of bananas and cucumbers and so on and so forth, and any vegetable that didn't meet the regulatory requirements of the EU were abandoned. They were just scrapped. Now, what kind of person, what kind of mind thinks like that? That's pretty controlling. When you can't accept that nature is non-conformist. All vegetables grow differently, there's slightly different shapes and sizes, and to want to make everything uniform. Now, do you think for a second that maybe they want to see all of us uniform too? And of course that's why they're building this monstrous bureaucracy, so it will become absolutely impenetrable. And all of a sudden, as I'm sure you're already noticing, I'm sure all of you are noticing, because the same thing that I am, and that is that all of a sudden it seems like decisions are just being made, and I am not a party to those decisions. I don't seem to have any input whatsoever. There was no consideration about how it affects me, my family, my life, my business, that kind of stuff. These things just seem to happen from on high, and they come down like edicts to the people. And so every day we are losing our ability to input into society, and again, this is this bureaucratic takeover. Bureaucracies are just these amorphous blobs that protect each other, and you push into one side and it just comes out the other. It is virtually impossible to change a bureaucracy in any significant way. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please comment, like and subscribe below. Click that big red button, it really does help when you do. And in the meantime, this is the Hound Dog signing off. Hoping you have a great weekend, and we will talk to you very soon. You take care now. See ya. Bye.